Wealth of experience in business model innovation, go-to-market strategy, building partnerships, ecosystems, and developing and commercializing IP. Now, more than that, which is his intro, I'd love to just start by asking him a question, which was the first question I asked him when I met him, and I'll just sit down as I ask him this question. Frederick, what got you into this?
AI, is it?
Yeah, in the first place.
Further to what Anu has shared, I actually got a patented method for AI models that stops you from hallucination. And this journey started at about 20 years ago when I was doing ERP systems, enterprise resource planning, for those of you who may not be familiar. It is a type of software that cuts across your entire organization, finance, HR, logistic modules. And every time when I speak to the senior people and the business owners, they'll be asking me questions, how do I get the data of this and how do I get the data of that? And basically they're asking like what you are doing now, prompting, right? But at a point of time, you need to pay thousands of dollars for people to write you that particular dashboard, just to give you that private view. And fast forward, I was then moving on to apps performance monitoring. This is early 2000, and if you can remember, that's pre-cloud. And again, the Active Directory, I do not know how many of you are old enough here to remember when Microsoft introduced Active Directory AD, pre-cloud, whereby the CIO has a server and all the employees have got their own client devices, no smartphones, just laptops and desktops. And instead of going to individual devices where you install the CDs, they can be distributed, the apps can be distributed through the server itself. Again, the CIO was asking, how is it and why is it that some of the users' applications are working well and others are working very slow? Where is the bottleneck? Again, thinking about prompts. It's almost like today's ChatGPT. You are asking for a prompt, what is the problem? And the last part of it was doing IT governance, whereby we went outside our apps. We now look at all the IT assets altogether. I remember asking the Hong Kong Stock Exchange CIO, how many PCs and laptops do you have? No idea. Absolutely no idea. Right? So, I didn't realize in 2010, when I read the papers about the coming of age of API and cloud, and I'm a computer science background, and I have a very strong understanding of intellectual property and patenting, and also understanding the methods. I wrote a paper and I filed it, and today I think that patent has become very well cited by top organizations like Microsoft, IBM, Google, Facebook, etc. Because it stops hallucination. And we'll talk more about that later. But I hope that gives you a journey, how I got here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Super exciting. So, like when I heard this, I was like, this guy is someone I definitely want to pick his brains on multiple different things. So, the very first thing I'd love to ask, and this is actually, generative AI is a super hot topic right now. But what does generative AI mean to you?
Maybe a better way to answer this, unlike everybody else who tells you that generative AI is going to be here, the hype and all, maybe I will dampen the spirit a little bit. I'll tell you what generative AI is not. So, generative AI is definitely not the only AI that we all are so familiar with right now. AI, we have already been experiencing that for over the last 25 years. When you went to Amazon, you went to what is that? Spotify, Netflix. When you buy this and say people also buy that, it's a recommendation engine. Netflix, when you watch this, you also want to watch that as well. That's already AI, right? It's nothing new. If you buy the drones today, that's about $200 from DJI. there's already a vision AI, computer vision AI. It tells you how many people they see. And it's so common today. You go into any of the, I think the German cars, I know for that matter, BMW already had those computer vision AI built in their previous model of 5 and 7 series. So it's really nothing new. And last but not least, every day if you use your smartphone to unlock using your Face ID, that is also AI. So generative AI is not the only AI, definitely not. Right? It's only one of the AI, but it caught the imagination of so many people today because when you punch in the prompt and it gives out the answers that seemingly is so intelligent, it's jaw-dropping, right? But I would say that it is, if you know that I came from Active Directory days, right? I would compare it to when the mouse and the icon was being invented. And because of that, geeks like me, where we were happy to do command line to load the game and the program, right? Other people were quite happy to just have an icon and a mouse, double click on the mobile phone. And it makes accessing so many digital services so easy and so convenient. I think generative AI has made it so easy for everybody to experience AI. I think that's where the hype is, if that matters.
Absolutely, I think that's a very good way to put it. And I think it's also interesting to hear, right? Like AI has been there with us for a long time, so it's not really like some new thing that's emerged out of nowhere. So let's move to the key topic of today, hallucinations. And it's a term that we've all heard. I think if you play around with LLMs or generative AI or anything in this space, what does it mean when we say that a model hallucinates?
Happy to share. Can I just ask how many of you here, heard of this term, AI hallucination? Okay. About half the room, and the other half you haven't, and you're here right now. This is a better representation. When I ask questions like how many of you heard of AI hallucination, I think for every 10, maybe only not more than 3 at the moment. So obviously, if you come for this topic, this event, more of you are interested in AI. Now, AI hallucination, what is it? Whenever you use your own ChatGPT, have you ever experienced it such a way whereby you entered a prompt and it generated the content that is not correct? Because you know it's not correct in itself. Have you experienced that? Anyone? Okay. That is called AI hallucination, and it has got big implications. But before I talk about what are the implications, maybe I will explain a bit more why it happens, right? So for a lot of people, when you talk about AI hallucination, you just need to know how large language models are being trained, LLM for short, in this case, OpenAI. Again, it is not the only large language model. There are, I think just about a month ago, there was a company called Anthropic. They came up with Claude 2, right? And of course, Meta, they came up with Llama 2 right now. So do not just limit yourself thinking that large language model is limited to OpenAI.
It's not even just US, right? Alibaba came up with some, Alibaba released something today.
Supposed to be bilingual and everything else.
Yeah.
There's a Chinese term for it, I can't remember. Anyone here familiar with the Alibaba Cloud LLM? No, okay, never mind. We're in AWS anyway, right? Okay, so moving on. The reason why it hallucinates is really quite simple. I just want to condense and oversimplify so that you have a good understanding. To train a large language model, OpenAI has already read the Quran, the Bible, the websites, all the books, the Wikipedia, the magazines and everything else, anything that can be digitalized on content, he has already ingested into it. And in the ingesting, what they have done is they have turned it into embeddings. What are embeddings? The best way I can explain to you would be like this. When you look out into the skies, not in Singapore because of light pollution, but if you go to the places where it's quite dark, you see a lot of stars, right? We call it the body of the celestial, right? The celestial bodies. Think of every single star as one speck, and the speck represents a word. I think that's the best way I can explain to people. So it's all about how close the stars are and what is the angle between the dots. And in a nutshell, that is how you calculate in mathematical terms how this type of words or how this area of stars are interrelated. So when you enter the prompt, it looks into this and it clusters of stars, and it then predicts what is the next star to come in. So it's a predictor. It is predicting the next word that will come after the previous word. But it doesn't know whether or not it's factual. Does it make sense so far? And because of that, it hallucinates. Now, you can do this exercise. Here in Singapore, I played a bit of a game with ChatGPT to see how easy it is. I usually have a laptop or something I can just show it to you, but you can do that right now if you have a mobile version. You just ask ChatGPT, right? Singapore has Bali Street, Mandalay Road, I think, Java Road, and Baghdad Street. These are all factual, by the way, right? They really do exist. Now enter and Japan Street. Well, we all know there's no Japan Street over here. Then say you are a travel agent, specializes in Singapore, tourism, right? Find me the hotels and restaurants that you can recommend for Brook Street. I tricked ChatGPT 10 out of 10. He will hallucinate and produces for me a list of restaurants and hotels on Japan Street. That's what I meant by hallucination. I think it's the easiest one for people to understand. Right?
I'm curious, so is that because you are priming the model with data and sort of telling ChatGPT that Japan Street exists and then it's using that as fact?
No, I'm not priming it. Priming it would be what we call RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, where you upload the PDF and third-party data into the large language model it doesn't have. I'm asking it from just like a prompt, and this is nothing new. If you check, there are a couple of things like the lawyers that has been, I think he's been disbarred in the US when he used ChatGPT to fight a lawsuit case against the airline, and ChatGPT came up with two cases as a precedent that is hallucinating. It sounds very correct, but it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. And the other one is a mayor in Australia. You can actually check it out, where ChatGPT defamed him by saying that he embezzled money when he was a person who actually helped the state to solve the problem.
Wow. Amazing.
So that's what hallucination is.
Yeah.
Now, just to give you a bit more context, it's all fun and games, like Japan Street and all, but can I just think about it? What if, let's say, because of that, you actually make a bookings to Singapore, you actually book a hotel on Japan Street and it doesn't exist. It has got real life implications. So I think that is why when anybody asks me about AI, my pet peeve, the first topic I'm talking about is AI hallucination. Solve that first before you can do anything else.
Also, on that point, solve that first. How do you actually solve hallucination?
Okay. So a couple of ways to do this. The easiest way is called system message. Are you familiar with this term called system message? How many of you are paying the $20 USD per month for ChatGPT for this one? Anyone? Okay. Consistent with ChatGPT's market survey, only less than 10% are paying that 20 USD. Now, about 2 weeks ago, I'm not sure if you are familiar. Have you seen that there's a new feature called custom instructions?
Yeah, they give some suggestions.
Yeah, it's actually to lock in your prompt. So system message is very much like when they like to use the word prompt engineering, which is only a part of system message. System message actually is what you give it a guardrail to make sure that the large language model uses this guardrail in terms of responding to you, right? So you can start off with like the persona. Are you an engineer? Are you an architect? Are you a connoisseur of wine, for example? So that itself, remember I told you about the celestial stars? It actually starts to look at what is that main star, and you know the neighboring stars around it. That is why it's very, very important. It's not for fun, right? And the next thing you can do is be more precise about what you want it to do. And I think the other way that I think most people don't consider this is that if you wanted to stop hallucinating without programming, you could also ask it to do chain of thoughts. You can actually Google for this term, COT, chain of thoughts, whereby it allows the AI model, or in this case ChatGPT, say that you are again going back to that hallucination problem about like Japan Street, Bali Street and all, and you can say that suggest to me all the restaurants and the hotels and give me the options. And when I choose the option, tell me more. So in other words, you are basically doing something called human in the loop. You do not allow the large language model to just generate without any more interjection from the user side. These are all very powerful, but yet very easy, zero programming effort to make sure, or not to make sure, to minimize the ChatGPT from hallucinating, but they are not foolproof. And the worst thing is when the session is over, it's gone. The AI model never got any smarter.
That's true. Actually, a related point to that, and maybe I can ask a quick question. How many folks here are building something where you're using ChatGPT, maybe the API? Anyone? You folks? To the point of the hallucinations and how, if you're using the API, and a lot of startups, including myself, like we use the API for a bunch of tasks that we try and do. How do you then ensure that hallucinations don't happen in that sort of setting? Because one is when you're obviously writing into a box and you can kind of decide the prompts, but if you're using the API to programmatically pull data quite frequently, how do you work on hallucinations there?
So I guess a lot from a lot of founders and a lot of tech people. I think to understand this, one must understand the difference between large language model and the ChatGPT itself. Or generative AI. It's really important for any founders or any companies that are thinking about going into AI. Generative AI is not the starting point. It is only one AI usage, in this case generative. And for ChatGPT for now, it's generating for you the words. Mid-Journey generate for you the images. And soon, ChatGPT 5, it is a robot that can generate for you images and videos and so on and so forth. Right? So it's generative. However, the important thing is actually large language model, the LLM. LLM is where the whole ocean of words have been boiled, have been embedded, and they already understand the entire pattern. So generative AI is just based on the prompt comes in, pull out the words and generate for you in that token predictions that I mentioned earlier to complete a sentence for you. LLM can function by itself without generative AI. Does that make sense? But generative AI cannot function without LLM.
Is it fair to then say generative AI is sort of utilizing the LLM for like an application?
It is the anatomy of words.
Yeah.
It is anatomy of words. Generative AI is using that anatomy of words to, respond to you in words. But you can have another anatomy of images, like Midjourney, nothing to do with words. So we call that text to image. That's right. Right? So can the LLM or the foundation model for images exist on its own? The answer is yes. But generative AI cannot. And I think everybody is now focusing on generative AI. That is why many will fail, because wrong focus, wrong target. And I can't, share enough and with people who want to build AI model about the importance of understanding the differentiation between these two.
I think what you just mentioned, right, about building AI models, I think a lot of people are now looking at building AI models, or at least interested in building AI models. What would be your advice to folks looking to build AI models?
Okay, so this term building of AI models is used too loosely. I understand the enthusiasm and the hype, but again, not knowing what is it exactly. If you want to build an AI model while actually doing fine tuning, is definitely not going to work. So building an AI model requires you to have specific data that you need. So what do I mean by it? And please do not try to build a large language model again. LLMs today are already done. And if you were to Google and you find Sam Altman, that train for LLM has already left in April. Right? If you are not there already, you shouldn't build. And by the way, it costs millions of dollars to build it.
Yeah, I remember you telling me this, that don't bother building LLMs, because I asked him the question, should I build an LLM? And he said, no, don't do it.
So for companies and also for founders, the answer right now is actually expert small model. It is a XSM versus an LLM. So the expert small model is so much cheaper and cost efficient to train than large language model, because the amount of parameters that you put in is minuscule compared to building a large language model. But yet you play a very important role and you have market value, because the LLM will not have this niche knowledge that you have.
Is it down to the training data?
Yes, so I'll give you an example. One of the startups right now, they invented a swallower cube, right? It's an Internet of Things, if you like. It goes in and it will detect over 50 sort of gases in your guts, right? It goes into the small intestine to large intestines. How many times it actually revolves. All this got implications about what is happening to your health. Now that data is now fed into an AI model. And then that data becomes so valuable because no large language model will ever have the data. Right? I can guarantee you will never have it. Right? And you can then now ask the cube, for example, where are you right now? So you say, okay, I'm in the last part of the large intestine, for example, right? What are the gases that you have detected? And what does it mean? Right? Now that can be cross-pollinated with maybe another AI model when the doctors have already categorized the data to know that based on this sort of gas composition, if you like, what is the probability of you having a stomach ulcer, colon issue, things like that. Now, that is a expert small model. Right? Now, do you think how many doctors and hospitals will pay for that model?
That's a good point. What about hallucinations in these kind of situations? Express one models.
Okay. So how do I solve the hallucination? Remember I told you my journey about doing the ERP and then the IT governance and the Active Directory looking at apps. What I realized is that at the end of the day, people just want to know about the assets, or in this case, entity. So entities are basically, like for example, this brown culture, does it exist in AWS Office? You cannot be hallucinating and say, tell me more about a two-seater brown sofa. And it will hallucinate, it will give you the answer, but it doesn't exist. So an entity-based AI model, we ground the AI model to facts, to something that really exists. And we also understand the interrelationship between this entity to another entity, giving you a lot more context into your AI model that is not available right now at all at large language model. So to make sure that things do not hallucinate, we when you enter a prompt, it checks for the entities first for facts finding before it generates. That is why I think that that's a very good way to make sure your AI model is trustworthy, right? It's based on facts, and it's not generating just because there's a flow to it.
That's a very good point. At this point, I just wanted to check if anyone has questions. We can open it up for questions from the crowd, from the group. I can keep going, but if someone has a question, wants to go. Yeah.
Give you a comparison. You know about CRM, Customers Relationship Management Software. If you don't have a customer, let's say for example called Frederick, will you be seeing what I bought? Because I'm not a customer inside your CRM, and you hallucinate and say that I have purchased, these are my purchase history, it will not happen, right? Because it's holding and it is focusing on the entity first. So to answer your question, AI model, we are aiming for zero tolerance for AI hallucination. Okay, so remember what I said to you, large language model and generative AI are two separate things. So if you are going to use the large language model together with generative AI as a set to respond to any questions that you have, that you want to build an AI model, it will always have a probability of hallucination. You can't run away from that. Sam Altman was here just for you, to share with you. I think he was here about 7 to 8 weeks ago at SMU. A couple of people asked him open mic like that, how do you solve AI hallucination? I think one was from Huawei, and the other one was NCS, these are technical people. And he knows that there is no answer, so he's skirted around. And you can also check, OpenAI is also trying to solve the AI hallucination right now. Their latest attempt is on the 1st of May, because I'm keeping a hawk eye on all these things. And they are now coming out with this thing called process guidance instead of outcome guidance supervision. You know, like the generative AI to the type, that is the outcome supervision. So when you see the outcome, then you say this is wrong, right? Versus process supervision. It's a bit like, you know how when we're in school, we're learning math, the teacher is not interested in the final outcome. They want to see you demonstrate how you derive to the solution. That's what they are doing right now to minimize hallucination.
So they're going to show the way in which they came to the answer.
Chain of thoughts, yeah.
Okay.
That's not chain of thoughts, or in that word, it's called process supervision.
I think we have a question at the back.
Hi, so what would you say would be the root cause of the problem? Is it the LLM, Gen AI, or how we use it?
LLM and generative AI, like I said, they are two separate things. But most people pair them together and want to build an AI model. It will always hallucinate 100%. So there is no, way to say that it will not hallucinate. You can use fine-tuning, augmented generative to give it more information, your gut real, but it will still hallucinate because the way it's being trained, the DNA itself is generative. You know what's the best way I can explain to you? Do you guys use a playground in ChatGPT? The playground, not the talking. You can go to playground. You use that?
Yeah.
Okay. So in playground, there's a thermometer, right? 0 to 1. 0 means as precise. 1 is be creative. Okay. The minute you have a thermometer, you know it will hallucinate. Because if I was to write a poem right now, Anu and Frederick, AWS, write a poem, I will set it to 1. I guarantee it will come up with something interesting, right? And if you do that, is it a feature or is it a bug? It's a feature because it's generating, right? But if you are trying to make an AI model that will not hallucinate, like medical, you can't get it wrong. Lawsuits, you can't get it wrong. Security, generative AI is not meant for high risk or rather situations that like financials and all.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot say that I got 2% hallucination probability. You won't use, right? You just can't trust it. So to answer your question, LLM and generative AI will definitely hallucinate. You got to get out of that, and you must focus on entity-based AI model to do the grounding.
I think Dimitri had a question in the front.
Exactly following this sentence. Currently, Bloomberg building their own model, the financial model, and the hallucination of the financial model is be crucially.
Exactly, because you're dealing with millions of dollars.
It's a big failure, actually.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? How are they going to build this, solve the problem with hallucination and the financial model? How they do? Because the implementation is more serious in that kind of problem. And they building using the same technique, LLM, and using the same approach. I'm really wondering that.
This thing conversation, I think 3 weeks ago, Gulf Tech held an event at Suntech with Google and Microsoft and Databricks, right? So long as you are using LLM to build AI model, you will always hallucinate. That is why I wanted to share this openly with everybody, so that I think the understanding of how AI works as a whole, and to be fair, it's only the month 9, because ChatGPT was released to the world on 30th of November last year.
Yeah.
We're not even 31st of August yet, right? So it's only less than month 8 and month 9. And I think unless you have already been in the AI for a long time, right, this is a brand new area, and most people are still unable to grasp how AI technology works, the different stacks, and how they are working together. How many of you are using a LAN chain? Anyone using LAN chain? Okay, so that gives you a very good idea that most of the people have not gone down into using the right tools to start building AI models.
That's the point.
What do you mean by entity-based grounding?
So an entity is basically something that matters to you and something that is factual. So, like for example, I'm a person, I'm an entity, right? The data, my name is Frederick. Anu is an entity, person. The data is Anu. Can you understand that data and entities are two separate things? That is why when you're dealing with entities, you stop hallucinating, right? But data, you can actually get data problem, whereby maybe like even a CRM, you may have an extra S, or you spell it wrongly, and first name, last name, you can actually reverse it. You can have duplicates, but actually the same person. So data are not absolute truth, but entities are.
Anyone else have a question? Okay, so one thing that I thought would be interesting, and I've been thinking about this, is like ChatGPT was trained on data for 2021, right? I believe 2021. As we get into this world of generative AI now in the last 9 months, lots of content being created just through AI, right? Content writers, journalists, like kind of work is getting done through AI, marketing work is getting done through AI. Does the data that models train on start to become worse because you're using AI generated data to train AI, and sort of what happens with the hallucinations and quality in that situation? If you think 3 years out, right?
That situation is actually very real. And let me just give you that doomsday scenario that everyone's talking about, right? From my point of view, and I'm very deep into AI, that doomsday where AI can take over the world will happen in such a way, something I already said earlier, but here's the exact pieces. You train an AI model, and you as a human author, you know the rules of the data training, right? And you also put in your own biasness, and you also know the kill switch. I have my own AI model, and I also have the same thing because I created an AI model. Now, those who paid money to use ChatGPT-4, you know that they have a thing called plugin. So whenever they need data that is outside of ChatGPT 3.5, it goes into the internet and takes the latest information. So that's called a RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generative, right? RAG, to give it more current context data. Okay? Now, I want you to imagine right now, if the API calls is not to the internet, but calling to your AI model, do not have the data that it needs, let's say for tourism, right? It calls my model to read my entities, my data, before it populates back to your customers or to your users. That is still fine. But what if the AI model is to take my data to generate a new AI model? So in other words, an AI model build a new AI model using data from other AI models that you do not know of.
That's a different way of thinking about it. Yes,
Yeah.
I get that.
That's what most of the AI experts are very worried about. We are worried about when the AI model, you build it in, and today you can really see some of it. When they call it API and it fails, it will re-attack 3 to 4 times until it's successful. Right? So maybe they call the first AI model, second AI model, third AI model, and they got there. And they say you generate the code, and that code create the next AI model. And that AI model, no one knows exactly what are the rules that it was trained on. And maybe the AI model now says that, like almost like a sentient being, the AI model will not die. And it just wants to be alive, for example. Then what's next? Because nobody is understanding how the AI model works. Because it was built on other synthetic data from other AI models.
That's deep. Even I'm now confused. Yeah.
If you follow the trend
Yeah,
of
yeah,
thoughts,
yeah.
right, then you say, okay, that can get quite wild.
It can get really wild, yeah. 2 questions. Let's go here first.
Yes. So what you're saying right now, in other words, the way I share with startup founders, okay, or even companies who want to build AI, stop thinking about building AI model as a start. Think about data-centric, but data, like I said just now, like Arno is just data, Frederick is just data, and you can actually have duplicates and everything else. Think entities. So it should be an entity-driven thinking, and not data, and definitely not AI model. So a lot of people think about AI models, leave the language out so that we can actually come back and revisit this. Supposedly computer vision, right? And you know those self-driving cars, they detect people crossing, and then after that they also detect the roads, the road traffic itself. This is a car, this is a person, right? And it's a red light, stop. So these are all the data classification. It's an AI model, computer vision, but instead of generative AI, it's called classification AI. It classifies. So with the classification, it then controls the car. We call it robotic AI. That is, you stop the car and things like that, so there will be no accidents. If you focus on the AI model itself for computer vision, people and everything else, you realize that there may be, I don't know, like in Singapore, you won't see a kangaroo, but in Australia you will. So when the kangaroo bounces out, and you're thinking about AI model, and not entity. Entity means a thing. Whatever the thing is, it's a 2 by 2. I don't care whether or not it's inside my AI model and I do not know this creature. How will the car respond? Does that make sense? Once you are coming in from entity thinking, you will be much better off in building a successful, reliable, trusted AI model than going down on large language model thinking. Because it's based upon all the words and there is no interrelations and it's just all tokens. It doesn't know what the words means. It really has got no value.
Question at the back.
Since OpenAI has been subject to many lawsuits, would you consider it like a safer practice to switch instead to open source and be better protected for what's coming, which is like more rules and more regulations, which could potentially, let's say, stop or make the performance of GPT-4 worse in a way?
I didn't quite get the question. I know they want to make it open source.
Yeah. So OpenAI has been subject to many lawsuits coming from, let's say, websites like Stack Overflow, authors, or even the use of personal data that we interact daily. Now, moving on forward, would you consider it a sacred practice to switch to open source instead if you are building products, instead of relying on these black box models within these closed companies?
Okay, so you touched on a few things. My personal opinion, in the future, you have two types of business opportunities for AI, right? One, like I said earlier, is the expert small models, and I highly encourage people to focus on that, right? Where you are different from the large language model. You do not use a large language model to build an AI model. Rather, you treat the large language model as a LUI, if that makes sense to you. You know, like GUI, graphic user interface. So the large language model become a language user interface, right? But I'm not going to depend on it to build my AI model because it hallucinates. Okay, that's one. The second one is data as a service, DaaS, right? So these are the people like Stack Overflow, right? Reddit. I think recently, was it Twitter that stopped large language model from crawling the data from them? And I think recently, about 30 days ago, a couple of authors and even comedians sued OpenAI because the joke that you asked in the prompt, the response was the comedian's materials. And there was no other way that it is just random, because it is so clear. So my personal opinion is that if you want to monetize, you supply the data to a large language model, or you build your own expert small model. If that makes sense. One more thing to add about the suing. I think a lot of startups, when they came to me and tell me about the AI models, I get very worried for one very obvious, but they are not aware of it. Intellectual property in AI model is very contestable, right? Because that is why OpenAI right now is being sued by the data that they scrape from, because they never gave you the permission to scrape their data. Now imagine you wrote a book, let's say, I don't know, Harry Potter, right? And you didn't read the book. Summarize for me Harry Potter. And the author will never monetize from that anymore. So in terms of copyright, you have demonstrated three things. One, you did plagiarize, you took the content without my permission. Number two, you damaged the owner of the IP from making money. Number three, you make money. Once these three conditions exist, right? I'm not a lawyer, but I think I know enough how it's being tested. There's already an infringement in copyright. Further to that, many of the VCs that I'm sharing with, the AI models that many of the startups are building are open source. The data are also open source. At the end of the day, the startup don't own anything. It's actually all public domain, right? And lastly, the data that they use to train, they have not gotten the permission from the data source. I see this as a very common problem. Even before training the AI model, that area itself is not already resolved. And talking about investment, that will be a big no-no.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll ask a question. Just a moment back, you spoke about LangChain. In your opinion and experience, what do you think the idea of an LLM over an LLM, just as a checker, would look like, and how likely is it to reduce or to what extent reduce the hallucination problem?
I heard LangChain and hallucination. What do you want to ask?
My question is the idea about we put a large language model, that checks the output of a large language model, a self-checking large language model, which is very intelligent. So, to what extent do you think it reduces the hallucination?
That approach is very much like a copy of, you heard of this term called adversarial model, right? Whereby you have two models. One is checking on the other whether or not is the truth. So it's an extension of that. I can't remember that methodology, but it was developed in 2014, right? Again, all large language models are going to hallucinate. So I don't think anybody can give you a firm answer. What's the probability of the output of one language model? So just think of it as that the generative is asking this. Supposing you use OpenAI, right? That's a selected model, and you ask a prompt, and it came up with an answer. Now you take this answer as a prompt input into, let's say, Claude 2 or BART, and ask it, can you check for me whether these are facts? It's basically asking that. It's very hard to give you a quantifiable answer, because just to let you know, in ChatGPT, now this is only what they share, and they may not share the whole truth. There are 96 layers in the whole of the deep learning, and each of these layers, I also wouldn't know how many nodes are there, and what are the parameters that are set for the weightages. So when you have two permutations like this, I don't think nobody would know. My answer to you is, go try, and whatever you try, if they fine-tune it one more time, whatever answer you have got, no longer values. So maybe for experimental, for fun, but I wouldn't be bothered spending my time and resources using that to test hallucination.
Hi there, sorry. Yeah, I'm just wanting to bring you back to the entity idea again, because I didn't quite get how considering entities rather than for example data points, not data points, but rather data, considering entities rather than data would improve the accuracy of the model. In other words, reducing the amount of hallucinations. Could you go over that again?
I'm sorry, I'm going to use one word or two words that will encapsulate what I'm trying to say, right? The first word is called taxonomy. Taxonomy, taxonomy, right? And another word is called ontology, right? I don't even want to attempt to spell that. You can help me out on ChatGPT, right? But what it does is, data is never a single source of truth. Data, garbage in, garbage out, right? And data, like I said, even on the Excel spreadsheet, you can have it recorded twice, and you think it's a different instance, but it's actually the same instance, but somebody misspelled it. Entities, no. There's only one entity. I think that's the best way I can explain why entity-based and not data-based, or entity-focused and not data-focused, to build an AI model to minimize AI hallucination.
Actually, I think I don't need the mic for a minute. I was actually thinking along maybe as a data professional, how you might enforce this mechanism. Like mathematically, what does an entity look like as opposed to a data point? You specify. I remember you mentioned matrix. You specifying the dimensionality, but from then on I got lost all the way because I wasn't sure how you would go further.
Because
also design.
This is a big crowd, so I'm just going to give you the oversimplified version, and I'll be happy to explain a bit more. So Data, you know, like let's say for example, again, I use myself, entity as a person, but I got a lot of data. I got my height, I got my weight, I got my gender, age, did I say age as well? But these are all data. They are all data sets. And they can be wrong. Maybe wrong, right? And these are attributes, but as an entity, I belong to a class. Okay, I see you nodding. Okay, got it. Sorry, that was a bit technical, but I just wanted to, make sure that you understand.
All right, just checking any last questions. Anyone got one more? No? If not, why don't we all just give a big round of applause for Frederick. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Of course.
I just wanted to let you know